It's certainly a unique, boat that you have here.
Our primary propulsion, or sole propulsion, is solar electric. So we're early implementers is what they would call us, and which comes with headaches because you can't possibly conceive of all of the engineers, the people who designed it. We can't possibly conceive of how it's going to play out in the real world. It's not like you can build a test one and test it out before you start selling it. Well, I'm Lisa, former educator, early retiree, living on a boat because of him.
And I'm Dave, who's always wanted a boat like this for years. I started out as a chemist and an engineer and a teacher, and then retired to build this boat and plan on cruising the Caribbean in it. We first got hooked on catamarans when my brother bought a Fontaine Peugeot and put it in the charter business down in Belize, and I took a couple of vacations on it and really loved living on a catamaran. But I'm not a sailor, so I like the idea of a power boat, and being a physics teacher and alternative energies, I got the idea of taking a catamaran, taking the mast and sails off from it, putting a roof on it with solar panels and electric motors, and having a power boat that was powered by the sun. And the more I thought about it, the more I liked the idea, and I eventually convinced Lisa, and then we started looking at boats, and we went down to Florida and looked at one similar catamaran to this that was for sale.
And when we stepped on that boat in Florida, and I walked in and saw the layout of the salon and galley, I said, I can live on something like this. Love the back, we call it the back porch with the teak. We love the teak between the tramps in the front because it makes anchoring easier. It gives me a place to do yoga. So I really liked that layout. So then we were working with a broker to help us find boats, and we said, we want something like this. And he found this for us.
This is a Voyage 440, 2002. It was a charter boat, so it was laid out with 4 cabins, 4 heads. I looked at Power Cats, and all of the Power Cats that were on the market were narrower for the same length, and they all had 2 or 3 or 400 horsepower diesels in each engine and a 1,000-gallon fuel tank, and that just wasn't my style. The idea of going green and having a small carbon footprint really appealed to me. And not being a sailor, that meant alternative energy.
It probably would have come down to cost ultimately anyways, because there aren't very many Power Cats in the charter business.
Yeah, the Power Cats are fairly recent and fairly expensive. And because I knew we were going to be taking the mast and the sails off and the diesels out, we could look for an older charter boat where the engines were starting to get tired, the sails had a lot of usage on them, the standing rigging was about ready to get replaced, so all of the things that would normally be maintenance expenditures on an older sailboat, we were taking off. I had figured it would take about 2 years to get the job done, and I could either keep working for 2 years and pay somebody else to do it, or quit early and do it myself, so I quit early. And we hauled the boat in September of 2016.
Yes.
And relaunched it in September of 2017, 50 weeks later. So it took me 50 weeks to do the conversion. I'd given myself 2 years. The budget was around $200,000 for the boat and around $150,000 for the entire refit. And that includes a year at a boatyard, having a crane come in to lift the boat out of the water and put it on the hard, and then reverse it again when it goes back into the water, building the roof and the panels and all of the materials and installations. We came in about on budget, so about $200,000 to buy the boat initially, and about $150,000 for the refit. One of the reasons I was on budget was the U.S. government gives a 30% tax credit for solar, and because this is our living space, converting it to solar was completely covered, including building the roof, all of the solar panels, the electric motors, the entire electric system. We designed it so that we could do 20 miles a day island hopping without having to run a diesel. So I've got 20 solar panels at 360 watts each, so 7.2 kilowatts of solar panels. I've got Super B lithium iron phosphate batteries. I've got two 48 volt banks for a combined 16 kilowatt hours of battery, 48 volt. The 2 electric motors by oceanvolt are 15 kilowatt motors each, and I was really skeptical. 15 kilowatts equates to 20 horsepower if you just do the standard math conversion, but the difference in torque between electric motors and diesel motors, these 15 kilowatt motors provide almost exactly the same performance that the 40 horsepower diesels provided. Now they've got better props because you can use a 3-blade higher pitch prop with an electric motor versus a 2-blade with diesels, but performance wise it's worked out pretty well. And we've got a diesel genset in each hull for backup or for cruising around the clock.
Right.
And because it's a catamaran, I split the boat right down the middle and have 2 identical redundant systems with the ability to cross-connect between the 2. Max speed, if we just push it right to the limit, is about 7 knots. And that's with a clean hull and no current. That's just pushing it with the motors. Mm-hmm. Typical cruising speed is around 5 knots. That's sort of the sweet spot of the boat, where it's a reasonable energy consumption, reasonable amount of time we can cruise at, distances we can go.
Okay.
We can get somewhere between 15 and 25 miles just on battery and solar.
Yeah.
These batteries have a 1C charging rating, so they can take 160 amps charging, but they've got a 3C discharge rating, so they can actually give 450 amps discharge. 300 amps would be our 15 kilowatt motor running flat out. So they've got a little more ability to give up electricity than what we need.
Yeah.
But because you can cycle them deeply and frequently, and they're a lot lighter weight, this was a refit on an existing boat, so I had to fit batteries into existing space.
Right.
So that was a prime consideration. That and the fact that they're ungodly expensive.
And would you be able to go X speed and actually produce enough energy on a nice sunny day to almost keep up with exactly what you were using?
Yeah, if it's a nice sunny day, about 4 knots, sometimes 4.5, with just incoming solar. And one of the other major benefits that this retrofit has done is, in order to accommodate all of the solar panels, we had to build a 600 square foot roof to put them on, and having a 600 square foot shade roof for the Caribbean is awesome. It acts as a little wind scoop in the bow, so we get a little bit of a breeze back in the cockpit under most circumstances, and we've got shade most of the places on the boat. We don't have air conditioning on the boat, and we don't anticipate needing it. One thing I did, and I'm not sure it's entirely necessary, but I liked the idea of it, on the roof, when we built it, because it's so wide, I didn't want to have a 30-foot by 18-foot wing up on top of the boat that could catch a hurricane force wind and do all sorts of damage. So I designed it in 2 halves with a 12-inch gap between the 2 halves, so that as wind is coming across the boat, it has an escape path to go. And then I put a 20-inch wide walkway above the gap so that I could have radar and antennas and that sort of stuff, and access to the roof up on top of that. And that has worked out well. And hopefully in hurricane season, we'll find out, or not find out. We'll not find out how effective that is. But it seems like it should be beneficial.
We've had some good gust storms that she's done well at.
Because of the aluminum framework that supports the roof, we now have a continuous metal structure all around the top and sides. So I turned that into a lightning protection system and have heavy wires running from the posts down to dynaplates in the water at the surface at the 4 corners of the boat. And up on the roof, I have a series of spikes in places so that if a charge builds up on the surface of the water, that charge should be carried up through the roof structure to those pointed points and dissipate out into the air to reduce the likelihood of a hit from lightning. Again, we hope to never
Yes.
test it, but that's one thing that should be working in our favor. And because all of that metal framework is connected to the water and connected to the sky by spikes, if there is ever a hit, this should act like a Faraday cage, and we shouldn't get the lightning going into the inside of the boat where we're living, and our electric propulsion system is not connected to it, so it's isolated from it. As the technology gets more mature and more dependable, a simpler design would have one generator of pretty good size, one large battery bank, one solar array, and one inverter, whereas I have two of everything. Having two of everything has bailed us out a couple times. When one component fails, you're still able to get back into port and run on half a system. And the generators are sized such that you can run two electric motors off from one generator and run them at about 3/4 power and still have it work fine. And even when you're doing that, you're still getting the full solar input. So you can get full solar input and drive two motors with one generator.
Wonderful.
Even if you lose all your batteries in one generator. They're 17 kilowatt generators, which are close coupled into a 40 horsepower Volvo diesel, 4-cylinder diesel.
We knew we could do a lot of electric. So we do have propane, but we've heard that it can be difficult to refill propane in some countries. So we were thinking, we have a lot of power. So we have a bread maker, we have a griddle waffle iron, we have a microwave convection oven, we have a Kickin' Ninja blender, a little mini food processor,
Electric water heaters.
electric water heater. We keep a vacuum cleaner.
Water maker, ice maker,
Ice maker, yep. We bought the ice maker and the
Yep.
water maker, installed those.
TV, stereo.
It is still funny. We have a lot of power, but you can't use it all at once. Switching from land life to boat life. It usually takes one morning of turning, we have an electric tea kettle. Turning on the electric tea kettle in the microwave really shouldn't happen at the same time.
and the
because
water
it'll
heater.
trip. And the water heater will trip something. So you just have to get used to what you can put on at the same time what you can't. You can't forget. You can't slip back into that land life of you can turn everything on at once if you want. Can't do that. Oh, we have a washing machine too,
Yep.
which runs on electricity and a little spin dry cycle.
I think the biggest challenge was fitting everything into existing spaces. And what do I take out? How do I relocate everything? Where do I run all the wiring? How do I redo the nav station so all the controls make sense and are easy to get to? How do I redo the helm station for the controls and stuff the way I want it? What electronics do I want to add? The boat had a handheld GPS as its sole electronics because in the British Virgin Islands you go from this island that you see to that island that you see to that island. So we had to redo the complete electronic suite, and since I'm somewhat of a geek, I also wanted to have forward scan sonar and side scan sonar, radar and AIS. For converting a boat, there are a number of options. Buying an older boat out of charter like we did has the advantage of tired diesels and older sails and rigging that are going to be removed and therefore don't have to be replaced and expensive. But also hurricane damaged boats. When the hurricanes hit the Caribbean and piled up so many catamarans, there were so many dismasted catamarans that could be purchased quite inexpensively, that the hulls were still in pretty good shape, and some of them, the engine rooms had been flooded, so the diesels had been flooded, and well, if you're doing a conversion to solar electric, those are great opportunities. So on insurance, we ended up contacting Boat US, and because I'd had insurance with them in the past, and when they said we could have Caribbean coverage without exclusions for times, I was really skeptical at first, but we did manage to get them to agree to it and send it in writing to us, and it's been really awesome. And I think the fact that we're a power boat instead of a sailboat, so we don't have to have a certain number of people on board, we don't have to have the standing rigging been replaced within X amount of time. It's been pretty good.
She has a Facebook page, Indigo Lady Conversion to Solar. And that's where he talks about the systems.
Yeah, then I've got a lot of the data, the performance data, the specifications, a lot of the technical stuff is in that.
I do the social media end. So I have a Facebook page, Life on Lady. I have an Instagram account that's at Life on Lady, and I blog. It's at lisamarkey.com. So I do the. It's called Life on Lady, but the domain is lisamarkey.com. And so I do the social media aspect. What's it like living aboard? It's more personal journal that I'm just putting out there for anyone to read, and he does the technical stuff.
Yep. My email is an easy one for it, daveonindigolady
Perfect.
@gmail.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Great.
Okay.